An encyclical is a letter written by the Pope to bishops, Catholics, and in the case of Laudato Si, the entire world. It's one of the most solemn ways that the Pope shares Catholic teaching and addresses pressing issues that are facing society.
I think this encyclical is really special because it brings together so many themes that we've seen before in environmental texts, but not necessarily in a really big social teaching encyclical in this in-depth way. He touches on so many aspects of the human relationship to the environment and the moral dimensions of our choices as citizens of the planet.
Yeah, and it's unprecedented because it's the first papal encyclical that is focused exclusively or primarily on ecology, and it addresses climate change in particular in a groundbreaking way. It addresses climate change with an unprecedented level of urgency and force. Pope John Paul II and Benedict addressed climate change, but never with this kind of urgency. And so it's an amazing document in that regard.
Pope Francis really puts to rest that debate that humans are masters of the earth and that we can extract and use whatever resources we want without limit. He says very explicitly that we are not to dominate the earth, but we are to be stewards and caretakers. And the language from the Old Testament, when translated, that's what that means. And that really changes things. The way that humans relate to their environment and care for it, and how what we do to the environment ultimately we do to ourselves.
It's incredible because in so many ways he's prophetic, but in so many ways he's building on Catholic teaching. This is something that the Church has consistently recognized, the interrelatedness of creation, of humanity, this moral imperative that we have to care for creation, to not exercise exploitive dominion over creation. So this is something that builds on Catholic teaching in so many ways and is really the next chapter of Catholic social teaching.
I also thought it's a very critical piece that he's challenging us to look beyond technology. Technology will play a role in our transition to a greener society, but it can't be the only solution, right? That we actually have to change the way we make things, how much we consume, especially in the developed world, and really these sort of fundamental changes that are hard to make initially, but he advocates for simpler lifestyle, human relationships, focusing on that, not so much on the being sidetracked with our digital devices, and focusing on the most important things that ultimately make us happy too as people.
And I think another thing that's so impressive about the document is how he balances a call for individual responses with systemic responses. That's something that Catholic teaching is consistently balancing, is this call to address problems at local levels, but then also, if necessary, at higher levels. And so that's what Francis is really calling us to, is personal changes to institutional changes, but also policy changes. That the issue of climate change in particular is such a global issue that we need to address it with public policy interventions, given our failure to address it at lower levels of society.
One thing that I thought was sort of special about the encyclical is that it brings up the idea that that when it comes to environmental degradation or climate change, there are no borders. We have these political borders, country borders, and climate change doesn't necessarily respond to that. And we need to start to see ourselves as nations, not just as insular nations, but as connected to other countries, that we share our natural resources, and that we need to, all people, not just wealthy people, not just middle class people, but all people on the planet need to be able to have access to natural resources, and we need to share it equitably. I think that that's something that comes out pretty strongly, that this is our common home.
So that's one of the things that I'm so excited about the event that we're doing here at BC, is bringing together all of these experts in service of the common good. So we'll be bringing together theologians, policymakers, a cardinal from the Vatican, to all think about ways that we can, that the encyclical can inspire change in our society to address these issues.
I think it's going to be a very dynamic conference, lots of different interesting speakers, and talking, about how we move forward as a society and really think critically about our relationship to the environment, what students here on campus can do to be part of it. We hope that they'll be really inspired and that they want to get involved. And maybe it's in choice of major or career or service. We have lots of opportunities. What better place than a Jesuit university to, like Boston College, to host a conference about the encyclical?